name is Riaan the Plooy. I'm the CEO and partner of Cansalt, and I'm with Jenny Yelton again, the founder and executive consultant for Purpose-Driven Solutions, who is aligning a purpose-driven approach to business strategy. Hi, Jenny.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Welcome back again, eh?
Thank you. Thank you.
So, in a previous podcast that we did, there was a lot of we got a lot of comments from subscribers on our YouTube channel about when you mentioned the impact of words in communication. And there was a request from a few of the people to learn more because we did a little teaser. I think we had too much to talk about. So today I thought we'd ask Jenny a bit more, to expand on the value of words and the words that are used all the time, that shouldn't be used. So Jenny, do you wanna start the conversation and kick us off for that?
Yeah, so before we even get into the actual impact of words, I just want you to think about conversation overall.
Yeah.
And there's some interesting statistics when it comes to conversation. And just so if I were just to ask you, if we were having a phone conversation,
Yeah.
how much impact would you think that you would feel based on the words? Like, let's pretend we're over the phone. So you don't see my face. You're not getting to see any of the facial
Yeah. Yeah.
expressions or hand motions. You're just hearing me talk. How much impact do you think is, if you did it in percentages, would be the words compared to the tone? Just a guess.
Look, for me, it's important. Obviously, I've done a lot of this, and it's very important to me always the tone that someone says something in. I mean, you can say "I love you," and it could sound like the biggest threat on earth. So, I think for me, percentage-wise, the tone is, probably 70% of the conversation, and probably about 30% just the words, because there's so many ways of interpreting it. And it also depends on what mood I'm in at that time. If I'm sitting in the car
Sure.
and driving a little bit fast on the highway or something, I might talk to you a little bit differently.
That environment and what's going on around you can
Yeah,
definitely
yeah,
change even your perception of words, and
exactly.
sometimes even who says it, even if they have it the right tone. Uh, it's actually your answer is pretty common, 70-30.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
even had people say 50-50. Here's what's interesting. It's actually closer to 15%. It's about 86-14.
Oh, really?
And yeah, I know it's a little interesting because when you first say that to people, they're like only 15% of the words because we spend so much of our time focused on what words we're going to
Oh,
say and
yeah.
so
And
worried
we
about what
practice them
words we're going to say.
beforehand and everything. Yeah.
Right. And so, it's but tone, like you said, does make a difference. Because, I mean, even as simple as something, now you can see my facial expressions. It's hard for me not to do with facial expressions. But if I were to say, "Hi, Rand, I'm really excited to be here," I'm using words that
We're
say
like,
all of
okay,
those things.
maybe
But
we shouldn't do this today.
but if I say it like, "Hi, Rihanna, I'm really excited to be here," just the inflection of my tone on the words can
Yeah.
make a huge difference. Now you are seeing my facial expressions, which actually make it even less. So if you add facial expressions and body language into communication, it actually is about 7% of the
Wow.
actual words that you
Okay.
use. So it's like 7, 38, 55. So tone is 38 and visual is actually 55. And it's funny, I could tell you that I'm having a good time being here without saying any words and without having any tone and just
Oh,
using
yeah.
visual, and you'd see it because I could just be like, and you'd think,
Right.
okay, she's having a good time. And
Oh,
you'd like,
dear.
okay, she's having a good time. I don't know what
How
she's
good a
talking about,
time
but
and
she seems
why?
excited.
No, that's
So what
pretty
are you thinking
interesting.
about that being so low? I mean, isn't that kind of interesting that it's so low?
I didn't expect it to be that low. I mean, like we say, we especially, with professional conversations, you go over your mind, you try and write down, you do a little bit of research before you just call someone. Because of the fact that you don't really want to, I don't know, feel or in your own mind feel like an idiot when you speak to someone. But it's interesting for me that it's so low and how that impacts on today's, work environment, working from home and, just doing these type of conversations. And I mean, recently we met face to face and it was a completely different, you know, um, dynamic when we got together. So yeah, I'm quite surprised it's that low, but I did expect it to be, a little bit different.
Well, and it doesn't mean you could just say anything. So let me be very clear with that.
Well,
There, because I said 10%, but you never know what that 10% is going to be.
oh
And
yeah,
so, when you do think about the words that you use, you want to make sure you choose words that do have impact, because that impact could be very important,
yeah,
because you could say something that can create a negative feeling to the conversation just because of that word, and that word has that negative feeling, creates that pessimism. And the reality is that people like encouraging and engaging words, especially if you're trying to build something,
yeah.
and you're trying to use that conversation around what can we build together and how can we collaborate, then those more positive, optimistic words make a difference. But negative words can have impact too. So
Yep.
when I think of like negative words, what I like, for me, what words come to mind that basically anybody could say, but it automatically is negative. So, like, for example, no, right? There it is. I mean, it's the word. But I
Definitely
have a
no.
funny no, I have a funny one, like, because I think my background's in HR. When someone says that's not my job, that's like a phrase that has a negative connotation. Like, as soon as somebody says that, it's
If
like,
I
even
if
though
I've
it
had a
may
dollar
not
for
be their
every
job,
time, I tell
it's
you what,
just
if I've had a dollar for every time someone has said that to me, I would be a really, really incredibly rich person.
So what are some negative words that come to your mind? Like, if somebody says it, it automatically means something negative.
You know what? There's some phrases or sometimes, just silly words that people use like bad. So it's either good or it's bad. I hate that word because it's like, no, there's probably something in between there. Or they say, it's bad and then it's not so bad. It's like, why not use the word good? And then, stuff like, this whole project is pointless because we're never going to get anywhere. It's a failure. People aren't doing what they're supposed to do. So all that kind of language, in the stuff that we do is then it basically sets us back, 10, 20 steps because, I've learned over the years, and I mean, it's a very common thing, that people say is, for every bad thing that is said to someone, you got to say something good at least 10 times for them to make up for that. And never mind, having one negative person influence a whole business versus a whole business of positive people can't influence one negative person. So, stuff like that. I mean, what's the words that you usually use?
Well, it's so funny. Before we get into the positives, I got to tell you some of the ones that drive me crazy. So
Oh
even
yeah,
simple things like I can't or I won't. Like, can't's an ability, won't's a decision. So when someone says I won't
yeah,
be able to help you, to me that's a decision that you're making, that you will not help
yeah.
me, because that's what
It's
won't
something
means.
completely in
Uh,
your control.
right, right. Or
Yeah,
are things like, my mom, and you got an opportunity to meet my mom. My mom says you need to. Anybody else in the world could say it to me and it doesn't bother me at all. But when my mom says you need to, it's like nails on a chalkboard. Like, I
yeah.
automatically
It's
get
like, come on,
kind of
let's
that
let's let's
defensive.
grow up. It's like we're not on the
And
school ground anymore.
so there's certain like phrases that are just really like, they're negative. And I, when I do this workshop and I ask people, you would be surprised things like that people shout out, like
Oh yeah,
failure, bad, uh I hate, or I don't want to, or,
yeah,
it's not my fault. Actually, any of the it's nots. It's not my fault. It's not my problem. It's not my job. It's not my responsibility. Any
yeah.
of the it's not mine all fit into that negative space. Uh, but it's actually, sometimes it feels good to get some of those negative words off our chest, but it can create some real negativity around it. And your point exactly, like, it can set projects back, it can set
Oh yeah.
relationships back. That Here's what's interesting. There are some words that aren't particularly negative,
Mm-hmm.
but can cause anxiety, concern, and fear. So things like I think, I believe, as soon as possible, I hope, I should,
Yeah.
maybe, probably, possibly. I call them my wishy-washy words.
Yeah, I don't
And
like those because
uh,
early in my career I was coached on these things to not use certain phrases and words in meetings. So when people come up with the wishy-washy stuff, it's like, okay, well, are we or aren't we? It's like, for me, it's got to be yes or no. You know what I mean?
yeah, and I think a lot of people use them because they want to kind of keep that. It's not a lack of confidence, though it can appear to be sometimes. I think that
Yeah,
people use them because they don't want to sound so maybe rigid. So they want to have a little bit of like flexibility in what they say. So there are some situations where it makes sense. Like, if you're having a conversation maybe about something that is not decided, there is some anxiety around it, saying things like, well, I hope we can work through this, or I believe that this can be a benefit for us. I
yeah.
feel like has some goodness. Like I don't think it's
Oh
a
yeah,
negative thing because it creates like kind of that emotional connection and a little bit of soft. It's the situation that makes a difference. So, like for instance, let's say we're getting ready to fly on a plane. Let's say we're going back. My dream place to go is Australia. So let's say you're taking me to Australia.
yeah.
Now I'm not. I don't know if I'm doing snorkeling, but let's say we're going to Australia. We're taking the family and we're going.
So the
If
pilot
we get
pilot
into
will say, "G'day, mates."
Okay, so after he says good day, mate, he says, like, thanks for flying. I think we'll be leaving soon. Hopefully, we'll have an easy takeoff. I should know more about that ASAP. I believe we're heading to Australia. We'll probably have an easy flight. We may be hitting some air pockets and possibly arriving early. Buckle up. How would you feel? I'd want to get off the plane.
Man, I would use that emergency exit immediately because, yeah, that's not where I want to go.
I know you don't want to feel like that in certain situations you want people to be more definitive and not
Yeah.
and those wishy-washy words, as much as they can make things feel softer, they can also make things feel less confident. But Rian, I have to share with you my
Hmm.
two favorite negative words. I mean, they
Yeah.
are I love them. And here's what's funny. You're probably going to think, well, wait, Jenny, these are kind of soft words, but reality is they're negative in any situation. They're always negative, and I use them,
Yeah.
and people use them. I don't use them. I try not to use them. People use them all the time, and that is, are you ready?
Hmm.
However, and unfortunately.
But however, unfortunately, we have to use those words sometimes.
Yeah, you see, this is where I'm hopefully you can see my perspective on this because I get a lot of
No,
people
I hate them
who
too.
question those.
I think you and I are definitely on the same wavelength there because if someone says to me something like, unfortunately, I already expect the worst. Yeah. And for me, in my position and the stuff that I've done, I immediately expect the worst and I immediately think, what am I going to do about this? So,
Because it is a red flag of bad news.
yeah,
Just
it
in case
just
there's
says
any
that
question.
things are not in control immediately.
So you had mentioned in a previous conversation like removing the word but,
Oh,
and
yeah.
a fancy but of that is however. And here's what's interesting about however. It
Yeah.
negates anything you said before. So if
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
even if they don't align, even if they aren't the same. So I could say something like, Rian, you're the most amazing person I've ever met.
Yeah. But,
However, the sky is blue. And you'd be thinking to yourself, why is the sky being blue have to
yeah.
do with my who I am? Like it automatically our brains come into that automatic response whenever
Yeah.
we put a however. It negates anything. You could say the most wonderful things, but the minute you say however, it negates it.
Well, it's the same thing. I mean, I definitely agree with you because it's the same as but. It's like you can say the best thing about someone. You can say, well, great work today, but you could have done things different. And that is exactly what that person takes home with them. They don't take the fact that, you've just given them this, what do they call it, a crap sandwich, where you start off with the good, the bad, and the good again. But at the end, it still tastes like crap. You know what I mean? So
It's like,
that's the thing. I mean, when I was working at the breweries in Australia at the stage, we went through a bit of a rough time, and we managed to get everyone together at a stage and just said, look, let's stop talking negatively about everything that we're doing. Let's just stop it. If you can't say anything negative, anything positive, then just rather keep quiet and go mention it to your manager, and then we move on. And part of that initiative was to stop using the word but and to replace it with the word and. So what we found out after that is, people would be in meetings and they would catch themselves going, but, something else happened. And then they would go, okay, no, wait. And we also managed to fix something else. So it immediately puts you in that more positive frame of mind to talk about something more positive. So it's an interesting dynamic. So what do you do with people that say to you this is, that it's not true, it's not the way it is?
Well, it's interesting because my very clever, I mean, super, super clever, and I hope you get a chance to meet him someday, son Alex, he's my youngest, and I say
Yeah.
youngest, he's 22, came to me one time and he's like, "Mother," and he does call me mother, so I should be concerned, but he says, "Mother, what happens if I say something negative and then say, however, doesn't that negate it? So, make it a
Oh
positive."
yeah,
And
yeah.
the answer is no.
No.
And no, it does not, because it our brains are wired to look for negativity. I don't know why. I don't know if it's a human race. I don't know if it's American culture. I'm not exactly sure where it came from, but we thrive on negativity. We
Oh
love
yeah.
it. So when we hear something negative, that's all we hear. So you could say something really, really negative, like, um, anything negative. Like, I don't like how we worked on that project. However, and you could say something nice on the other end, and the
Yeah.
brain is still stuck on that first part.
It's just not going to
And
matter.
so I really talk more about switching even how we communicate in general. So I will tell you, I do get pushback on that, but I tell them, just try it. Just go through and do exactly what you did. Take however and but out of your vernacular, don't use it,
Yeah.
and just put and in or start a new sentence. The one I get a lot of flack more on, though, is unfortunately. I do get some pushback about unfortunately. And it is the red flag of bad news, as we already discussed, but it's so pretty. It is such a pretty word. I mean, it rolls off the tongue. When you write it out with a little Y, it flourishes. It's like, unfortunately,
I
unfortunately.
think
Doesn't it
people are
sound
just
pretty?
used to saying it though. I mean, if
So
you have to,
pretty.
it's like, if you're in a manufacturing environment like I've been my whole life, and then you're used to people swearing and using bad language, but then you get into a corporate situation and you gotta not swear because otherwise you look unprofessional. I think it's some of those things that all of a sudden you realize your vocabulary isn't as big as what it should be, and having English as a second language is probably another handbrake that you should work on. But then you get into the situation more often, and you start learning what you should say, what you can say, what you can't say, and you can still put your personality into what you're saying. You can still get your message across. It's just in a different, more positive way, I would say.
So, do you think that, do you use the word unfortunately, like in letters or in communication, or have you seen it?
I've seen it everywhere, but I really try not to use it. I mean, for me, it's as soon as what you say the word unfortunately, it really just shuts down the conversation. It's like it really does. And something I've been working on for a very long time is open-ended questions. Giving people an opportunity to speak too, because apparently I like speaking too, the same as you. But yeah, as soon as what you use the word unfortunately, especially in an email, I mean, I don't even respond to emails like that unless my company's burning down or something. But because then you can use
Well,
whatever word you want.
so I agree. So what do you why do you think so many, because I mean, I could tell you right now, you it's one of the most common words used in American culture.
Hmm.
And it is super common. And why do you think that people use it? Why do you think what would be your thought on why people would use the word unfortunately?
Jenny, I think a lot of the stuff is like fillers. It's people use them to get their mind to think about something else or think about what they're going to say next. Especially like, however, unfortunately, But the stuff that you shouldn't say, or you should try and minimize when you're doing like public speaking and that kind of stuff. So I think it's, to me, unfortunately, if people are using, that in a conversation, then they know they don't quite know how to give you bad news, if you want to say it like that, or not so
Yeah.
good news. So
Right.
yeah, I think it's a bit of a filler. What's your opinion on that? I know you've studied this stuff.
Yeah, I agree with you that I don't even think people hear themselves using it, and that's kind of what those filler words are. They don't
Yeah,
even recognize that they're using the word. I think that most people use it because they think it's an empathetic sounding word. And it
yeah,
is, it's a pretty word. And so they use it to kind of soften the blow. But the
mm-hmm.
reality of it is that the real reason they use it is it takes the blame off of them and puts the blame on something else.
Yep,
So they would say, "Oh, I would do this for you. I'm so in, but unfortunately I can't. Unfortunately, you were not selected for that job.
yeah, yeah,
Unfortunately, the policy doesn't allow." The problem is by saying unfortunately, it's removing the accountability and the decision away from the person communicating it and putting it somewhere else. And sometimes we're making other things that are not bad bad. So
yeah.
when you say something like, unfortunately, the policy doesn't allow me to do that, you're really saying that the policy is bad, is what you're
And it's the
actually saying.
policy's fault, not mine. So don't
It's the
talk to
policy's
me.
fault.
I can't do anything. I can't give you a
No,
refund on your flight that you canceled.
you
you
and me
know?
are like this. Unfortunately, I can't. And
Yeah,
what's interesting is, you know, when you when you have that word, it actually means bad luck to you. So when
yeah,
anybody fights back with me and says, "But I want to use unfortunately, it's softer, it's nicer." I'm like, "Okay, for just a month, go into your Google grammar or whatever you have
yeah,
and
yeah.
have unfortunately change to bad luck to you." Because that's the actual definition of the word unfortunately. And
Mm-hmm.
see how that sounds. So bad luck to you, the policy won't allow it. Bad luck to you, I can't give you a refund. Bad luck to you. And once you have that mindset, that's what unfortunately actually means, you'll stop using it.
I think that's
But at the
a
same
great
time,
way to do it. I think a lot of people should do that, especially, especially like call centers. They're renowned for this stuff. Especially, look, I'm going to pick on this guys because I've really had a bad time with him. But like just I don't know. I'm not going to say their name, but
don't say the
you
company
know,
name.
let's say
A
the
company.
airport companies. Things change all the
Airport.
time. They can mess us around with boarding times have changed and everything. But as soon as when I book a ticket, overseas or whatever, and something changes, and I, you know, within 24 hours cancel my ticket. Now all of a sudden, 3 months later, I'm still waiting for it. But unfortunately, their policy says that they will pay out a full refund within 24 hours, which 3 months later they still haven't done. So, stuff
So
like that gets me
is it bad
really
luck to you?
frustrated because that's
Is it
exactly the words that they were using. It's like, unfortunately, that's the way it is. And you say, okay, but your policy states clearly that that's what you do. And they just ignore their own policies. So, yeah, if anyone's
so
listening from any airways out there, we can really help you guys get your shit together.
so they they are really telling you seriously bad luck to you because now
Bad
even when
luck to
somebody
you.
else
Yeah.
says unfortunately to me, I hear bad luck to you
Yep.
in it. So it doesn't mean that you don't tell people that they don't get what they want, right? That's the
Yeah.
one side of it that I think is important, is that you can still tell people no, but I think about when to do it. So one of the probably the biggest takeaway that I when I used to do customer service training was that we spend so much time focused on what we can't do for people.
Yeah.
And instead, all I say is start with a positive first. Start with what you can do for them because every customer, client, anything comes in with the same intent. And they come in at A and they already have in their mind what they think the resolution and
Yeah.
solution
What's
could
going
be.
to
They
be?
don't know
Yeah.
what goes on between A and B, but that's what they think. And if you keep telling them, I can't do this for you, I can't do this for you, then it's a negative thing. So I focus on what I can do for somebody first before telling them what I can't do for them. So if they have A, if they come in at A and they have Z in their mind as a solution, I try to offer them C, D, E, and F
Yeah.
before they even get to Z. So I'm never telling them no because I'm telling them what I can do for them first.
Yeah.
Uh, so kind of an interesting scenario that I used when my kids were little. And I love sharing the story. They hate that I share the story, but I love sharing the story. Is they would love to drink like, and I'm going to use a Midwest. They would love to drink soda pop, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, whatever, wherever
Yeah.
you are in the world at night. And I had a rule for them, not me, a rule that no soda after 7, no soda after 7. And they would come to me and they'd say, "Hey, mom, can I get a Coke?" And I would say, "You can have milk or water." And they would say, "But mom, I really want a Coke." "I know, Coke is amazing. You can have one tomorrow morning. You have milk or
Yeah.
water." "But mom, I just really want a
Yeah.
soda." "I get it. I love soda, milk or water." You notice that I didn't
You
say
have a
no.
lot more patience than me.
Uh, well,
We're like,
let me
here's your
just tell you,
water. Go to
I,
your bed.
after after several years of that, they finally were like, "Milk or water, milk or water." But
Yeah.
but the idea behind it was I didn't go with "you can't have this." I went with what they could have first. And
Yeah.
so I always try to start with the what I can do and the positive words before really delving into that negative words. And it makes a difference in your interactions and your engagements
Oh,
when you
definitely.
focus on
Yeah.
those positive first.
I think that's a great way to look at it, Jenny. I think it's a lot of, people in general. I don't think people understand the impact of their words. I do think, you can see when someone's thinking about what they're going to say before they say it, or they just blurt it out and all chaos erupts. But I do think, especially these days, we should put in a bit more thought before we speak. And also remember that we've got 2 ears and one mouth, so, clarify things. I still love the saying, seek to understand before being understood. So make sure that you understand what people say before you react. And in general, I think, if we stay away from, words like however, or unfortunately, or just bad words, or not so good words, but, I think in general, the world will be a better place. So I do think it's something we should focus on, especially in the workplace. And especially when people are working remotely, because, a lot of times people don't even switch on their cameras. We've got a few massive clients, and, people use photos from 20 years ago. And when you actually get to meet the person, they look completely different, and they've got completely different, attitudes. But, I think that's important for us to realize that in these days and these experiences that we're having, we're living in a very unique world, and we should try a lot harder to make it, better for everyone and not just for some people.
I agree. And I think that's one of the reasons that, I do share the statistics of the impact of words, but remember, you don't know what words people will, be driven by or
Yeah.
inspired by. So if you really want to make sure that you're showing positive intent and that you're creating a positive feeling and engaging with someone, especially if you aren't in person or not even video where they can actually see you,
Yeah.
you got because not everybody has natural tone and not everybody, personality makes a difference on like I have walked out of more rooms saying to myself, and I know you have too, I
Hmm.
shouldn't have said that, than I've ever walked out of a room thinking, oh, next time I'm going to say this.
Oh,
So
yeah.
there's some people that have that, you know, that are extroverted in the direct in their communication and some that aren't. And, we talked about disc a little
Yeah. Yeah.
bit in that space, and that's part of the purple belt is exploring that disc side. But so if you know that you're a direct communicator, then you do have to put a different filter in. If you're an indirect communicator, you want to make sure that if you're going to use words, they're the words that really represent what you're trying to say. And
Yeah.
so using more positive words like I can, I will, I'm happy to, even please and thank you. And using somebody's name,
Just the
Riaan, just using
basics.
somebody's name makes makes a more positive experience overall.
No, I definitely agree. And thank you, Jenny. Thank you for joining me for another little conversation. I enjoy these. So we look forward to the next one. And yeah, for everyone that's subscribing, we've gotten up to, I think, about 4,500 subscribers at the moment, which is great.
That's exciting.
Yeah, get your, forward this to your people, and send it out, and get more people to subscribe to the channel, because we're going to have a lot more of these conversations and a lot more exploratory, just seeing what people get up to, that we can change very quickly, and help people all across the world. So yeah, thank you for everyone, and thank you, Jenny, for your time. Now please like and
I
follow
enjoyed
and
it.
share and subscribe. Cool.
All right.
Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.